This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Yay. Behold the consequences of your actions.
My favourite play of all time is Arcadia by Tom Stoppard. It's about, it's about advanced mathematics and chaos theory. It's about literature and grouse and landscape gardening and academia and sex and the tantalising unknowability of the past. It's the kind of play where a 13-year-old schoolgirl in 1809 says to her tutor,
"When you stir your rice pudding, Septimus, the spoonful of jam spreads itself round, making red trails like the picture of a meteor in my astronomical atlas. But if you stir backward, the jam will not come together again. Indeed, the pudding does not notice and continues to turn pink just as before. Do you think this is odd? You cannot stir things apart."
13-year-old Thomasina is a genius, by the way. She goes on to basically formulate the third law of thermodynamics 30 years early. It's that kind of play. But it's nowhere near as annoying as I'm making it sound, I promise. So beautifully and simply are all its ideas presented. That whole rice pudding thing is pretty obvious. It's basically saying what's done is done. You can't unscramble an egg, but Arcadia says it in a way that I think really nails the unpredictability, the stumbling, non-linear consequences of every act we take. Time moves forwards. We stir our way onwards, mixing as we go, disorder out of disorder until pink is complete. This is your pudding. You made it, not what you expected when you started stirring. Tough shit, dude. That's life. That is, unless you're playing a video game RPG, of course. Because, yo, that pudding turned out pinker than you wanted. Bro, just reload the save before you added the jam to it again. You did save before you added the jam, right? You did save before you added the jam, right? Baldur's Gate 3, already one of my favourite video games of all time. It's about Dungeons and Dragons and brain-eating aliens and bear sex and emo vampire boys who, trust me, I can totally fix, and beautiful, strong, perfect devil women who you will have to literally fix, and 100 ways to approach any situation with 100 different consequences that you might not even realise until much later. It's an absolute firework display of a game, exploding with ideas and complicated mechanics, all centred around a cast of engaging and relatable characters and Lizelle. It's a game that's arguably the culmination of 20 years of work and evolution from its publisher, Larian Studios, a masterpiece in every sense of the word. But this isn't really a review. Okay, it's a review, 10 out of 10. Rather, there's something very specific that I want to talk about today. The thing that I think elevates Baldur's Gate 3 above any other title in its class. The thing that makes it unique in its genre. The most unexpected reason that this is Larian's greatest triumph. Baldur's Gate 3 achieves the impossible feat of making you trust the dice. This is not a video about save scumming. I mean, it kind of is, but it's not a video about the ethics of save scumming, because that's obviously a non-issue. No one cares how you play your video games. And look, man, I'm a complete Elden Ring with a purist bonk build and no summons kind of gamer, but damn it, if it's 1991 and I'm building a 6 sim city on the SNES and it's taking shape just how I want it, and Bowser shows up and starts stomping through it, then yeah, sorry, you better believe that game is getting reloaded from the nearest save, because I haven't got time for that shit. I've got taxes to raise. Or if I'm playing BioWare's Baldur's Gate 1 and Edwin gets chunked so that I can't even revive him at the temple, lol, as if reload. Or if I'm sat here at this desk playing, in my opinion, the greatest installment, in my opinion, one of the greatest role-playing game series of all time, Football Manager 9, and I've got Swansea City to the Champions League final, and the night before Adam Lafondra breaks a metatarsal in training, then yeah, absolutely not. It's reload time. I've been developing that kid for 3 years. There's no way he's missing the Champions League final, you know? Because video games generally are pretty goal-orientated, and in single-player role-play games, those goals are often intensely personal. So if a game develops in a way that hinders or flat-out invalidates that goal, why shouldn't you reload a previous save and let it play out again how you'd like? This is meant to be fun after all. I would even argue that save scumming can be elevated to an absolute art form, and one of the best ever examples of this comes from Larian's own previous RPG, the perfect and unimprovable Divinity 2 Original Sin. I've got thousands of hours logged into this game, and a huge chunk of that has been spent perfecting my favourite in-game pastime of carefully placing all my party members around a space, having each one chat to guards and NPCs to distract them while I pickpocket all the traders in the area and take their sweet expensive goods. Then as soon as the stuff is swiped, teleport out of the area to a distant waypoint, so when said merchant gets all all uppity and demands to check the bags of my crew for contraband, all they find is legit paid-for items and trundle off feeling sorry for themselves while Los is around the corner divvying up the contraband ill-gotten gains. I mean, come on, 20 out of 10 game, no notes. Now, of course, the way I've described that, it sounds like my group hustle is easy to pull off, but it's not, you know? There's plenty that can go wrong, like if some NPC that you didn't account for suddenly comes in for a wander and sees you, that game is up. If you get a bit too greedy in what you take from the trader, then likewise, they're gonna rumble you. Your game is up. You could just accidentally pick the wrong target to rob who you don't have the stats to reliably swipe from. And basically, sometimes, at the very least, your pickpocketing is gonna get noticed, especially if you are stealing expensive magic items and armor, which of course you are. This is the big leads we're talking about here. And then it's a one-way trip with the popo for you. And if that happens, yeah, we're reloading, fam. Because do you know what the least fun thing in any video game is? Going to jail. It always sucks. It's always just an absolute pain. Sometimes you end up losing some really cool stuff that you've spent ages collecting. There's just no need. I've already incurred enough of a time penalty on myself with all the saving and reloading I've done to steal the stuff in the first place without having to deal with that headache on top. Now, do I feel like I've hindered my Divinity 2 Original Sin playthrough to do this? Heck no. My steal scumming magnified the enjoyment of my initial run manyfold for sure. So that's my opinion on save scumming, and I have the exact same opinion on that approach when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3. Obviously, play the game however you want, however gives you the most enjoyment. And if that means reloading every time something happens that you don't like a particular NPC dies, or you fail a quest that sends a story beat going off in a certain direction that you don't want, or Karlach is even slightly unhappy about even anything you did, like even for a second, then you're doing nothing wrong by smashing F8 like it's the like button on this video. Go for it. When I started my first playthrough of the game with Evertel in co-op mode, which you can find us playing on our Twitch channel 3 times a week, by the way, I fully expected to take the same approach. And Evertel's of the same mindset as me, maybe even worse, so I pictured our campaign as being one long party of changing our fate by pressing F8. Fate. But an incredibly strange thing has happened, internet. So far, we're deep into Act 2 of this game with over 80 hours on our save, and we have reloaded a grand total of once. One reload after a total party wipe when we accidentally pulled the toll collector and she absolutely flattened us. But to my amazement, that has been the only occasion. A literal game over where we had no other choice. At no other point have we felt the need to load up a save and make things play out differently. And here's the thing, there are things that have happened to us in this game where we absolutely could have done, where in any other game I suspect we absolutely would have done. Things that, as they were happening, I was sitting there thinking I was definitely about to. Let me give you a quick rundown of times when I thought I was about to reload in Baldur's Gate 3. When I got sent to jail? The Outback game.
Oh!
There's a time and a place for smashing, but it appears this
Did you knock that over?
Yeah, I
You're
shot it
getting
with
locked
my...
up.
Oh, off! I've already gone over how much I hate that shit, and that's when I deserve it for stealing and generally being a ne'er-do-well. Here, I was sent to jail for misclicking a button and accidentally shooting a ladder with my crossbow, something that I could easily blame on jank pathing and controls, because that's exactly what it was. And no one would have blamed me for reloading in that circumstance. But I didn't. When Volo went at my eye with an ice pick. Yeah, he said he had a plan for my tadpole, and even though I knew it was probably a bad idea, I let him have his way with my squishy peeper, and even as it became obviously clear that he had no idea what he was doing, and I was certainly going to end up with a horrendous injury, I still let him carry on at it, thinking to myself, I'll definitely have to reload after this when I get like a -5 on perception or something. But as it turns out, I didn't. When we were on a mission to find a guy called Nier in the Grimforge so that we could save a bunch of gnome prisoners, which we really wanted to do, but we spent too long faffing around and he died in a cave-in off screen.
We just got to complete a quest.
Oh, what was that?
Nier is dead.
No!
We were too busy doing other shit, and he died.
And all the dwarves working for him pissed off and killed the gnomes on their way out. Maybe worth a reload, that one. Countless ability checks and conversation paths that didn't go the way we wanted, which we saved right before. Hold tight, I'll find your bag. Sure,
Thank
man.
you.
Whatever.
Thank you.
Do we blow up if we touch them? I wonder. Let's have a look. Oh, yes. Oh, run. Uh-oh. I mean, that's a lot of fire. I feel like...
Who did that? Was that you?
I guess that was probably me.
Oh, he's dead.
Where trying again would have been easy, where the F8 key is right there, more desperate to be touched than Lae'zel at a Grove party, but for some reason, we never did. Not to mention the multiple times that infamous pathing has resulted in some of the most idiotic deaths and wasted turns in high-pressure combat situations. 2 words, lava pathing. You know what I mean. You all know what I mean. Lava pathing.
Oh my god, you absolute idiot. F me. F my life. How do I get her out of the lava?
You can't. Or when a misclick has meant that we've walked in through doors we aren't allowed into and become enemies of everyone in a place that we don't really want to be enemies with. F8 is right there. It's right there. But it has gone completely unpressed to the extent that our official team name on stream has now become No Reload Gang.
Play the
no
game
reload
properly.
gang
No
is
reload.
here.
Okay, now.
And why is that? It's not because I've made some moral decision to have a pure run through the game with no degenerate behavior. Let me be very clear. I have no problem with degenerate behavior in Baldur's Gate 3. Take, for example, what I call my picture of Dorian Gray technique using Warding Bond. Sorry, I just want to explain this one because I'm actually quite proud of it. Warding Bond is a spell that you cast on an ally, and that ally gets +1 armor rating and resistance to all types of damage until the next long rest. An absolutely baller buff with the downside that every time the caster or the recipient take damage, 50% of that damage is replicated on the other. A big curse for a big kiss. However, in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, there is a 60-yard range on Warding Bond. In Baldur's Gate 3, there is not. Which means that if you were, for example, a cheeky bardlock who likes to get into melee with your Pact of the Blade and mess things up, you could recruit someone into your party who you have absolutely no intention of taking out with you. Like, I don't know, just off the top of my head, Lae'zel, let's say. Get her to cast Warding Bond on you so that you get all those sweet, sweet buffs, then tell her to stay in the camp and replace her with a proper party member like Karlach and go off adventuring with that Warding Bond still there between you, safe in the knowledge that you are not going to take any of Lae'zel's damage because she's not taking any. She's nice and safe in the camp with Scratch, and any damage you take isn't hurting anyone else in your party, but rather doing voodoo doll shit on your picture of Dorian Gray back at the camp. This is clear degenerate behavior, even if using the mechanics of the game in a clever way for unintended advantages is something I would argue is totally true to real life D&D, and therefore 100% in keeping with the spirit of the game. But yes, I think in terms of sneakiness, the picture of Dorian Gray is definitely more sneaky than reloading a save after I accidentally shot a ladder in a goblin camp and got sent to jail for janky controls. So why didn't I reload the game after being sent to jail? Well, of course, it's because of the way that Baldur's Gate trains you to trust the dice. I don't mean literally, although I do mean literally as well, come to mention it. Baldur's Gate 3 using actual on-screen D20 rolls turns out to be something of a masterstroke, because yeah, it's a pleasing D&D-ism that just helps the whole vibe and feel of the game, but more importantly, I find that having the dice roll up there as a tactile, observable action makes it much easier to accept bad results. When that kind of stuff happens behind the scenes and I'm just told I did or didn't slip on the ice or hit the enemy or push the hag down the hole, that shit pisses me off. I am very likely to F8 in that situation. But when the dice roll is right there, it makes failing that 70% chance much easier to take for some reason. But actually, when I say trust the dice, I mean in a slightly more philosophical sense, in the way that the game presents its decisions and consequences, both intended and accidental. Pretty much the first decision that you are asked to make when the game starts is how to approach a possessed brain on the Illithid ship. So okay, then there's the different approaches that you can take to removing the brain if you choose, from investigation and medicine to strength and dexterity. And then you have the choice between lobotomizing the brain or not. An unlobotomized brain will follow you around with more intelligence and wisdom. A brain you tried but failed to lobotomize will run away, and a destroyed brain is obviously useless to anyone except React streamers. In practice, the difference it makes to the game is minimal. It's flavor. What this section teaches you about the mechanics of Baldur's Gate 3 is to always play to your character's strength. If you're strong, pick the strength option. If you're nimble, pick the dexterity option, etc. But what it teaches you about the moral compass of Baldur's Gate 3 is ultimately far more important. Because this is a lot more nuanced than the good-bad binary which most games present you with. Look at these choices. Who is to say what the Paragon or Renegade choice even is here? What this and plenty more to come is teaching us is to be true to your character, both ability and character-wise. That the results are different depending on what you choose, but won't really be right or wrong from the game's point of view. And this is massive because loads of games give you choices in how you behave and what you do, but usually it makes it very clear if you are doing something good or bad. And quite often continued bad choices will have some kind of negative effect over time. But even if they don't, the game is making a judgment. Not you can do what you feel is right, but you can be good or bad according to us. And that's an important difference. When each decision comes down to what the writer has decided is the good thing and the evil thing to do is missing, then suddenly those choices don't become so obvious. Suddenly the outcomes don't feel so much like a win or a fail, even when the dice roll is literally telling you that you failed. Let's look at a bigger example of this, the Grove. On the face of it, this is a very obvious good-evil choice. Do you help the Grove by defeating the goblins, or help the goblins take over the Grove and slaughter the inhabitants? But you know, it's not that simple. So for a start, the druids whose home this is are generally being pretty shitty to the tiefling refugees, even though they are essentially just trying to protect their home in the best way they know how. Can you blame them for that? The refugees themselves are planning a violent uprising against the druids who took them in and saved their lives before, because they're about to be cast out again. They owe the druids their lives in the first place, but can you really blame them? The goblins, for their part, aren't actually aggressive towards you when you arrive at the camp. They have no quarrel with you, and it becomes quite clear that there are ways to save the Grove without bothering the goblins much at all if you don't want to. What even is the good or evil choice here? Generally, it's probably going to depend on your own personal sense of morals or ethics, and not much else, because the game doesn't judge. And that's cool by itself, obviously. That's just mature, interesting, nuanced writing. But more important is the effect it has on how you approach the entire game, because it refuses to punish you on a moral or mechanical level, whatever you do. The outcomes are just different. And you begin to notice that even if something happens that you didn't want on the face of it, just like in real life, it's perfectly possible to fail upwards in this game. So what was the real reason I didn't reload when I got sent to jail through no fault of my own? Well, because it turned out the cell I found myself in was right next to Halsin, the captured druid boss who me and Evie had been looking for unsuccessfully in this game for 8 hours at this point.
Stop them! Free me!
Oh, could that be him?
It might just be a bear.
All I had to do was escape from my rather shoddy cell to get him. It taught me to maybe trust the dice.
Guys, listen. I've got some news to share with you. But before we get into any of that, it is my solemn duty to say thank you Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. You guys are the best. Okay, so due to what I'm gonna call scheduling issues with talent, our members only space, aka Tally Fans, was pretty short-lived. I hope you did get in there while you could. Thankfully, turning off a members only space is as easy as flipping a switch. I mean, literally. Bye-bye. The whole Squarespace experience is just as simple and fluid, whether it's adding fresh pages to your site or going in to edit existing ones, like our merch page. Oh, right, that's what I was going to tell you. Thanks to Squarespace's super convenient merch integrations, we've added some exclusive new goodies, namely these "There Are No Old Gods at BlizzCon" tees, because it's definitely true. Tell your friends, put it on a shirt, walk around the con confident that there are no old gods lurking in there. Nope. None at all. I am so confident about the truth of this statement that I'm going to ask the shiny new Squarespace AI, so shiny it's still in beta, to help me write the description here. Write a paragraph about old gods at BlizzCon. Oh, there we go. At BlizzCon, where fantasy and gaming enthusiasts converge, the presence of the old gods is palpable. Whispers of their ancient power resonate through the convention halls, sending shivers down the spines of attendees. The mere mention of names like no, prepared to lay down your life in the service of the old ones. I mean, ready to make a really cool new website? Set it up with a few simple clicks and a free trial on Squarespace. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/TaliesinEvitel or use code TaliesinEvitel to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/TaliesinEvitel. Don't forget to buy a shirt. They demand it.
The reason I didn't reload after Volo literally took my eye out with an ice pick is because he felt felt pretty bad about that and gave me a new eye from his collection, which means I can see invisibility now. It made me think, hey, you know what? Maybe I should trust the dice. And having built that trust, it meant when our plans eventually went wrong in other ways, like when we let Nier die because we took too long to get to him in the Underdark, that didn't feel like the fail state it may have done in other games, because we'd been taught by then that something different would happen rather than something worse. And it did. So on the downside, yeah, all the gnome prisoners died. That's bad, fair enough. But on the plus side, we took Nier's head to the mushroom people, and they were well happy about that. And they did their happy mushroom dance, and the happy mushroom dance is awesome. Is it worth letting the gnomes die? I mean, it's a really good dance. And if your experience of all this is anything like mine, then you suddenly realize that you are playing this game without your video game brain switched on. You're not thinking about the cogs and wheels of the mechanics or second guessing what the game wants you to do. You're just playing.
Oh! Really? Did you press the brake lever or the release brake lever? Which one did you do it?
I just pressed
Did you
brake lever.
Did you press the wrong lever?
Yeah, sorry.
Jesus Christ.
And when you're not doing that, it makes you realize how much you do it for every other game you play. I realized I haven't approached a game like this since I was literally a child, and it feels so freeing. And so of course people love this game, because it manages to take you back to a more innocent time in your life and relationship with video games as a whole. It's no wonder it elicits such a strong emotional response in so many people. Spoilers for Last Light in Act 2 coming up. But after the big set-piece battle there, where we successfully saved Isabel, we just carried on as normal. But we learned from our guild Discord later, it is very possible to lose that fight, that loads of our friends had allowed Isabel to be carried off, which then makes the protective barrier come down, which then results in the camp being overrun by the shadow and everyone being possessed and then killed by you. Fail state, if ever there was one. But what is amazing is that every single person on our guild Discord who that happened to carried on, did not reload this absolute game changer of a fail. And that's incredible that this game has somehow instilled in players this level of trust, where even if things go that incredibly wrong on the face of it, you're still going to feel that Larian has your back, and that actually it really is now just different, not worse. And that's incredible, really. And in my opinion, it represents the single biggest triumph of what will undoubtedly go down as one of the best games of all time. Yes, even after the inevitable backlash, which I predict is probably about a week and a half away at this point. Not only is it fairly unique in video games, or video games of this scale at least, but it's also, because of it, the closest a game has ever come to actually feeling like Dungeons and Dragons. It's already a cliche at this point to say that Larian is the DM that lets you try crazy things, who says, go for it. And that is true, but more importantly, Larian is a generous and sympathetic DM, one who's more than likely going to throw you something cool and worthwhile, even when it seems like everything has gone wrong, who rewards you for being true to your character rather than right or wrong, or good or bad. And I know there'll be plenty of you watching this who'll be like, lol, no, this game hasn't had that effect on me at all. I am save scumming the shit out of this and loving it. And that's great. You know, that's not a failure on your part or the game. But I would bet that for every player who hasn't had their habits changed by Baldur's Gate 3 at all, there's another who can really relate to what I'm saying here. How Larian have made me progress through this first playthrough in a way that surprised me so much. And I might not stick to it. I might decide that something happens which I'm so against, which I dislike so much, that I absolutely will reload and change my fate with F8 without a second thought. But the fact that I haven't till now, the fact that I would actually feel a slight sense of loss if I did do that, no reload crew represent, shows you how much this game has changed in me and how much I trust it. I have never felt like a game had my back before like I do with Baldur's Gate 3. Like I can just
stir our way onward, mixing as we go. Disorder out of disorder into disorder. Until pink is complete, unchanging and unchangeable, and we are done with it forever.
And look, there is still a banging jam and rice pudding at the end of it. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you especially if you made it through to the end of this video, because I know it's not our usual sort of thing. I don't think we're going to make a habit of making Baldur's Gate 3 videos on this channel, but it has taken over our lives for the last couple of weeks, and we just had to express that in some way, I think. I know there's lots of WoW stuff coming up, probably this week, which we're going to be talking about, but in the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject of this video and your stories about Baldur's Gate 3. Genuinely, I just love hearing how people play this game and the fun things that have happened to them. So please, fam, do me a favor and tell me about your character and adventures in the comments below. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. And guys, seriously, thank you, because without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evertel. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name is Fextra Life. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evertel and Penrin and Eve and the No Reload crew. Until next time, cheerio.